everyone. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first half of April and the full moon that we have coming up in Libra on the 13th. Just before we dive into the astrology, I just wanted to extend a very warm welcome to any new subscribers that have joined recently. I hope you enjoy the very varied content on this channel, so welcome. Just a reminder as well, scammers are everywhere, and people are being affected by them. Not just me, by a long way. Many people are experiencing scammers, and it's very hard to get the platforms to do anything about it. But I just wanted, particularly because I'm an astrologer, this makes that problem bigger, because just to clarify, this is the only YouTube channel I have, Pam Gregory Official. So normally I would never ask you to do this, but if you subscribe, you should get notifications just for this channel. Obviously, I'm often interviewed on other people's channels, and they are legitimate as well, but there are a couple of AI channels going around, and often they have quite poor production values and speeded up pace in the videos. So just be aware of that. There's some very active scammers on Instagram using my name. I'm not active on Instagram. Also on Telegram, there are apparently two chat channels called Pam Gregory Chat. They aren't mine. I don't know who set those up, but they aren't mine. And the problem with being an astrologer is if someone offers you a reading in my name and you then give your personal details and money, then that's tricky. So I strongly suggest, I haven't done client work for some years now. I'm not offering any readings. I would never approach you directly in that way. So please do not give your personal details or money to anybody who's using my name. In terms of other social media, I'm very active on Facebook, just Pam Gregory, a Pam Gregory page, and also a Pam Gregory astrology page just for my astrology posts. They're both public and open, and I give all my information as far as I possibly can for free. That's how I want it to be. I just want this information to be freely available so that you can learn more to understand your own birth charts. So hope that clarifies. Just don't give personal details and don't give money. We are going to have a very fast, dynamic, event-packed and fiery month in April. So we're still very much under the influence of the eclipses, which, of course, the consequences of the eclipses are going to run for the next 6 months, but they were pretty potent. Even the partial solar eclipse that we had in Aries on the 29th, although it was partial, not total, because it was also the second closest new supermoon of the year, we saw a lot of earthquake activity. We had the devastating earthquake in Myanmar, a 7.7 and a 6.4. Many of you would have seen the buildings collapsing on local videos there. It's been really tragic with thousands of people dying and being displaced and injured as well. We've also had 6 significant earthquakes close to Tonga. The largest of those was 7.1. That was on the 30th as well, I believe, as well as the Myanmar ones. We had 2 roundabout magnitude 6 earthquakes in the mid-Atlantic range, the mid-Atlantic ridge, and that's fairly unusual too. We also had a huge coronal mass ejection, which I believe was on the 30th as well. And if that had been Earth-facing, that certainly would have taken out a lot of power grids. And luckily, it wasn't Earth-facing. It veered off to the east. But just be very aware, there's a lot of social activity right now, solar activity right now, and a lot of seismic activity. The sun is very active. So let us just hope that all calms down. And in my evening meditation, 7 o'clock every evening, UK time, just free for 15 minutes. We just join energetically. No link, no Zoom link, no tech, no recording, no nothing. You just join energetically. I'll put the link for the video below explaining how you do that. It's very simple. And just join in, and you can put into that circle people who are suffering, extreme weather, seismic activity, whatever, people you know, animals who are suffering, and just see everything abating, just see everything calming down, everybody healthy, happy, and thriving. We always, in these meditations, have to focus on the result we want, not focus on the problem, because otherwise we expand the problem for them. We have to focus on everybody being happy, thriving, healthy, all living sentient beings being respected and cared for. And that means we can get to that point faster. We're energizing a more loving new earth. Now, Mars has been really stuck in Cancer. We're going to look at the chart for the full moon in Libra in a moment. That happens on the 13th, as I say. But Mars has been, because of its retrograde motion, in Cancer since last September 2024. It moved into Leo in November, December, but then back into Cancer. And it finally re-enters Leo on the 18th of April. But for this first half of April, it's still going to be in Cancer. And when it's in Cancer, it tends to be very, can be moody, can be reactive, easily triggered emotionally, and also because it's still out of bounds until the 7th, and that means that Mars in its orbit is beyond the normal 23 degrees north or south of the ecliptic. It can react in a more extreme way. The instinct is to protect those you love, your family, protect your home, and protect the homeland as well. It can be quite nationalistic. But the impulse is protection. So it's going to express in a more extreme way, potentially, up until the 7th. But it's also very strong at this full moon in Libra, as we'll see. On the 7th, Mercury ends its retrograde motion, and Venus ends her retrograde motion on the 12th. And from that point on, all planets are moving direct until the 4th of May, when Pluto moves retrograde. So from that point on, from the 12th of April, we'll have this feeling of a stronger momentum. It's a good time to move ahead with projects because all planets are moving direct. Just watch the 5th of April particularly, because not only do we still have Mars out of bounds at that time in a trine to Venus and Saturn, but we also have the moon out of bounds. So that could be a day when particularly emotions are running very high. We might be feeling very sensitive, very over-emotional, very overreactive. So just be aware of that. And whatever's happening in the world, particularly in April, because it's so highly charged and fiery, a lot of fire energy, Aries, primal fire, take a breath. Take a breath before you react. Take a breath before you choose how you're going to react, because it isn't so much, as the great Carl Jung said, what happens to us in life. It's how we choose to react to what happens to us in life, to always just pause and take a breath and think, I have a choice. I have a choice to be the best I can be and react from love or react from fear and instinct. So just be aware, and you may be very grateful that you don't just kind of trigger back. As Mercury on the 7th and Venus on the 12th start to move direct, we will begin to get a clearer idea of what we think and what we feel, and also what we want. Mercury and Venus moving direct. Because while they've been retrograde recently, that may have been harder for us to really really get clarity on. Now, although Venus doesn't move out of her shadow zone until mid-May, increasingly you will have a sense of clarity from the 12th onwards. And also because Neptune is now in Aries as of the 30th of March, that will also, shedding its Piscean fog, and we will have increasing clarity and increasing truth from this point on. A lot, I've been saying this for a long time, and a lot, of course, is coming out on alternative channels, but even more so has to come out through the mainstream channels too. Okay, so we have also in early April a lot of conjunctions and sextiles. And I'll be mentioning a couple of those in a moment. But a sextile is a 60-degree aspect of opportunity. So you may find in this first half of April, particularly, that you're having a lot of new ideas that are sparking, coming out of the blue, and a lot of opportunities. It could be meeting people, it could be reading something, or somebody sends you an email, whatever. New ideas and new opportunities coming in. On the 4th, we have an exact sextile between Saturn and Uranus. Again, the new coming in to what has been established. And we also have Mars sextile Uranus, and that's a pretty sparky sextile as well. Again, suggesting newness and sort of taking a jump in our perception as well. So that can be some kind of download or insight, some kind of shift in perception for you that could be very helpful creatively. On the 6th, we have a sextile between the Sun and Jupiter, which is very, very positive. See where the Sun is falling, see where Jupiter is falling in your chart, and also Venus and Uranus have a sextile between them. And that's, Venus is beautifully placed at the moment, so that can feel quite magical, quite sparkly, not just sparky, but sparkly. Really magical and very fine perception, an unusual appreciation of beauty as well, an unusual appreciation of aesthetics, and again, highly creative in a very individual way. On the 7th, we have Mercury conjunct the North Node, and that can suggest ideas that we're kind of getting from the field, almost from the collective unconscious, that feel fated, that you are destined to pick up and develop in your writing or in some creative project. We also have Venus exactly conjunct Saturn then. And this is about establishing a more solid, regular spiritual practice, Saturn. A more solid daily spiritual practice. That's a really good way to use Venus conjunct Saturn. So also we've had, and it's moving away a little bit now, but we still have Venus conjunct Neptune. It's out of sign because Neptune's now moved into Aries. But this is moving into this whole new episode for humanity based on unconditional love. Venus exalted in Pisces, conjunct Neptune. This is about unconditional love. That's how we are initiating this next episode for humanity. And so Venus is in a really strong place in Pisces. Let us look at this chart for the full moon, and then I'll start to, because there's an awful lot to say about this as well. So, here. Okay, so here we see the full moon that's happening on the 13th. So I set this chart for the UK, so ignore the clock face, ignore the houses. We're just going to look at where the planets fall and their aspects to each other. So as always with a full moon, the sun and moon are opposite each other. So this full moon is at 23 degrees 49 minutes of Libra. So see where 23:49 of Libra is falling in your own birth chart. And whatever that house area is, just observe, is this a time of closure in that area of life, be it home or be it work or be it friends or whatever? Is that a closure or a completion or a culmination, or is this full moon sharing a light brightly on something that you weren't aware of before? Just observe, and this is how we can really start to use astrology in our lives, just to observe what is happening. Full moons every month, a great time to release what no longer serves you, particularly as we are moving out of all this old energy. I know people were going through, myself included, a huge amount of releasing, purging, detoxing, shedding with all of the very powerful astrology in March. But this is another opportunity at this full moon in Libra. Now, the ruler of Libra is Venus. And Venus is very strong here, not only because she is in Pisces and she is exalted in the sign of Pisces, which means she is at her best expression, but she is also stationary here because she is just beginning to move direct. So she's in a very strong position. And, there's something really magical and ethereal about Venus in Pisces being so strong here. And also she's in an almost exact sextile, which I mentioned before, to Uranus, this sparkly ethereal quality, magical. And what I would say with this strong Pisces emphasis, and also the full moon being in Libra and Pisces are both extremely creative signs, so very good for any kind of creativity, particularly sort of poetry, music, art, anything visual. But also they're the signs that tend to be most giving to other people. Libra is the sign that tends to be what I call other directed. If you're okay, then I'm okay. If that makes you happy, that makes me happy. Let's do what you want. There's a sort of instinctive deferral to the other. Pisces, because it's so gentle and kind and sympathetic and empathetic, can also give away self to others too. So just be aware of that, because it's really important for all of us that firstly we get our own needs met, and then we are even better in a position to help others, rather than always, because there's this big theme that's been running for quite some time. I've been talking about in recent videos about giving away our power to others. And this is a time of stepping into our sovereignty in a much bigger way. Because not only has Neptune just moved into Aries, zero of Aries, which we can see here, but Mercury moves into zero of Aries. That's just going to be an interesting day to watch the new zero of Aries on the 17th of April. And then Venus moves over zero of Aries on the 1st of May. But just watch 17th of April particularly. But Neptune is going to stay at zero of Aries until about the 28th of April, and then it just moves on to 1 degree of Aries. But remember, it spends about 14 years in each sign. So it's going to be there for a long time in Aries. So this is this shift of stepping into our autonomy, our inner power, our sovereignty, in a way that we probably have not done for many lifetimes. It's also about more truth coming to light, as I say. And one of the great things about Aries energy is they have a very clear sense of self. I know who I am. I'm in the present tense. I'm in the moment. I know who I am. I have confidence. I have clarity. So with Neptune being there, followed by these other personal planets, we are going to become clearer on who we are and what we want going forwards. Libra, being ruled by Venus, is also about what we want. Now, still with this Pisces emphasis, all of the Pisces themes could come up at this time. So issues around water, the seas, the oceans, toxicity, pollution, drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, illusions, deceits, lies, the media, blood, oil, our immune systems, all of those things, Piscean themes could come up because there's such an emphasis still in Pisces. But it's interesting here that we have some very strong yang energy as well as yin energy. I'm going to come back to the yin energy. But we actually have a very strong T-square here between the moon, the sun, and Mars. Really powerful. And actually, Mars is in an out of sign opposition to Pluto. So this is really a slightly squiffy grand square because it's out of sign. Because Pluto is already moved into a fixed sign, whereas the other Sun, Moon, Mars are in cardinal signs. But nevertheless, this is very potent. Now, one level at which I could read this is brute force, willpower, brute force. And in the past, we've seen this aspect, particularly the Mars opposing Pluto aspect, as being threatening, intimidating, violent action, warlike. But this is really its lowest expression. And we are moving beyond that in our consciousness now. And so we can use this to blend our individual will with divine will. Surrendering to divine will, if you like, is a much better expression, manifestation of how this could be, because this opposition, Mars-Pluto, was very prominent right around the time of the US election. And it brought about the opposition, brought about very obviously massive polarization, which continues today. Huge political polarization, because it's an opposition, people not seeing your point of view. But what we need to do with challenging astrological aspects is always try and integrate them. So this sense of bringing your individual will in line with divine will is a much better expression than any kind of polarization, threat, intimidation, violence of any kind. Now, we also have, this is super interesting actually, what we also have here is the sun, and also all of these are opposed by the moon, in really tight aspect to Chiron and Eris. Now, Chiron, I've often referred to in Aries is, and we all have it somewhere in our charts, but the sign and the house that it's in are very reflective of where your individual wound was in your early life. Now, if you have Chiron in Aries, it is usually in your early life you had a sense of, do I have a right to exist? Because the Aries energy is I am, and you are wounded in the I amness, if you like. So there's a sense of, for whatever reason, do I have a right to exist? But always with Chiron, it's meant to be turned into leadership. And I'm going to give you a great example of that in a moment. On the other side, we have Eris. This is the female warrior, sister of Mars, and an archetype that is uncompromising. She is linked to she's said to be the goddess of chaos and discord. She demands equality. She demands truth, justice, that every voice being heard. She will fight to the end to demand that everyone is included in society, every voice being heard. Now, this chart is also saying a lot about the divine feminine, actually. I mean, Pisces has beautiful divine feminine energy, Venus being exalted there and stationary, and the ruler of this full moon is very much speaking loud in terms of divine feminine. And while I was preparing to do this video, Gandhi kept popping into my mind. Gandhi, who, that wonderful Indian man who stood up peacefully against the great British Empire. And he did that through a philosophy of complete non-violence. It was actually civil disobedience, but non-violent civil disobedience. He never wanted to see violence, so he led his people as this tiny little Indian man to, it was him that led the movement to eventually result in India's independence from the British Empire, and he inspired freedom movements across the world. So I just happened to take a look at Gandhi's chart because he kept kind of coming into my mind as I was doing this. And his Chiron, I remembered his Chiron was in Aries. His Chiron was actually at 1 degree of Aries, 1 degree of Aries, so on the world axis. So he was prominent in taking, and you can understand how he may have felt wounded in that culture, the Great British Empire, as an Indian man who, you know, the Great British Empire did not treat the Indians well. I do not feel proud of our history during that phase. But my goodness, through his dignity, his grace, his honor, he turned all that around into leadership for himself and leadership for the Indian people at the time. So his Chiron at 1 degree of Aries was expressed magnificently. He also, interestingly, had his ascendant at 25 of Libra, conjunct this full moon. It's like he was speaking to me through this full moon. And his midheaven was at 25 of Cancer, where this Mars is. So the way he was projecting himself to the world, his midheaven, the values he stood for, he is encouraging us, I feel, through the ethers, to not use Mars as violence, but to use it peacefully to bring about autonomy and sovereignty for self and for the collective. I mean, I just think it's really beautiful. I laughed out loud when I came across his chart again. And of course, his famous phrase was, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change, live it. And I'm going to come back to that theme. Now, what we also have in terms of divine feminine here, we have Black Moon Lilith at 1 degree of Scorpio, very tightly conjunct Homer here, 2 degrees of Scorpio. And they are both expressions, actually, of the divine feminine. Divine feminine, I really see as the yin. It doesn't matter about your gender. The yin, receptive, nurturing side of us, the creative side, the sense of interconnectedness to all living things, divine power that connects us to the earth and all of nature. There's a kind of heightened intuition here. And Black Moon Lilith, as you might remember from the myth, she refused to submit to Adam in the Garden of Eden. And as a result of that, she was expelled from the Garden of Eden. But she stood in her power. And so she has a wild, untamed, instinctive feminine aspect to her symbolism. And she's very much about stepping out of patriarchal suppression and the toxic masculine into her freedom, her autonomy, her sovereignty. She is uncompromising and rebellious, just like Eris. She is conjunct Homer, as I say, and Homer is very much connected to nature, this sense of an instinctive shamanic connection to the earth, the natural rhythms, etc. So here we have Black Moon, Lilith and Homer actually in a quincunx. The computer isn't showing it here, but they're in a 150 degree aspect to Neptune at 0 of Aries. So it's a quincunx. And so there's a strong theme here. And also the sun conjunct Eris, the moon opposing Eris. This is also the divine feminine. Standing, and the divine feminine can be very strong. It's not weak or passive or a pushover. Black Moon Lilith certainly wasn't. It's strong, but it loves nature, the earth, and this sense of interconnectedness of all living beings. I think this is quite beautiful because this is the energy we are moving towards. Eris, remember, is the warrior feminine. So, and then on top of that, there's so much to say here. We also have a very important yod. Now, a yod is like a skinny triangle of 250-degree aspects and a sextile at the base. So the sextile is Venus-Saturn conjunction, 24-25 of Pisces, sextile Uranus, 25 of Taurus, and they are both in a quincunx, or all three of them in a quincunx to the moon. Now, a yod is a finger of God or a finger of fate. If you have this natally in your chart, this kind of skinny triangle, you can only have a 2-degree or by the way. You've got to use very tight aspects here. Then the planet at the point of the skinny triangle is the planet which is highlighted for you to use in a fated or destined sense in your life, that incorporates the energy of the 2 base planets, or in this case, 3 base planets. So here this is again about the moon in Libra, this very loving, nurturing, maternal energy that's coming in and bringing everything back to balance and harmony, Libra. It's also, by the way, about social justice, Libra, and it's about the law as well, which I think is interesting. But the moon here with all of those attributes is incorporating Venus, all loving, unconditional love. Venus is still conjunct Neptune here, a little more widely. Also conjunct to the North Node, our soul's collective path of destiny, with his strong sense of greater spiritual discipline, very loving, and also bringing in new structures, new realistic, new Uranus, authentic, long-term realistic structures that we're going to create in New Earth. Some really, really, I think, very beautiful things here. And Saturn enables where we're moving to be more stable as well. I think that's important to say. Saturn gets a bad rap, but actually Saturn can turn lead into gold. And I'll stop sharing here, but I just took a look at the Sabian symbol for 24 of Libra. And remember, with the Sabian symbols, you always have to round up to the next degree. And the Sabian symbols, as I've mentioned before, were downloaded by a very talented medium, Elsie Wheeler, about 100 years ago, I think. But I often followed James Burgess and his interpretation of the Sabian symbols. And for 24 of Libra, he says that represents an exceptional facility of consciousness. These are his words: an unusual level of spiritual awakening that can be activated by serious seekers who then become the seeds of a general evolutionary leap. I think that couldn't be more relevant to where we are right now. So many of us feel there's been this shift of dimension, shift of frequency, particularly in the second half of March. I feel it really strongly. I know many of you do, and it doesn't matter if you're not feeling that yet. We're all on our own journey with our own timetable. But really, even if some of us have felt it, this is what this Sabian symbol is about. An unusual level of spiritual awakening can be activated by serious seekers, meaning spiritual seekers, who then become the seeds, the forerunners of a general evolutionary leap. They're always people like John the Baptist who go a little bit ahead to create the stepping stones of light might I say, for the collective to follow. And each of us is in the right place to do that. So there's no judgment, there's no right and wrong. We are each in our correct place. Now, these shifts in dimension and frequency are going to continue ongoing all of this year, etc. But can you feel the magic that's starting to happen? Can you book more stillness meetings with yourself? Drop into whatever does it for you. Is it being in nature? Is it bare feet on the grass? Is it listening to the birds and the silence beyond the birds? Is it listening to sacred music? Is it breath work? Is it candle gazing? Is it meditation? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Where you can just have that kind of automatic dropping into profound stillness and bliss. Because, that sun, S-U-N, tightly conjunct Chiron on the one hand and Eris on the other. One is where we've been wounded, but are now stepping into our leadership. And the other side is this strong, divine warrior feminine who said, we are not compromising. This is a new episode in Aries to step into our power, our inner authority. So it's so interesting, the original victim and yet the uncompromising female warrior. So tight, like a pincer movement on that sun and opposing this full moon. So can you step out of any remaining victimhood? Just say, today is the day, now is the moment, I'm going to let that go. Whatever that's represented and served, however it served me in my life, I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to step into my inner authority, my sense of operating from the inside out, not the outside in. And as Vivienne Chauvet suggested, how can I serve the light today? Because this evolutionary jump for us is not happening out there. Some of it is being triggered from out there. The sun's activity is reactivating strands of our DNA and changing every cell in our body. We're embodying more light. But the evolution is actually happening through us, through our physicality. And in us being able to hold more light. So, Gandhi's famous phrase of be the change you want to see in the world, that's very much an inside job. If there's warlike energy out there, and there is, and there'll continue to be so at that 3D level, can we embody more peace? The more of us embody more peace, there just won't be the energy for the leaders to create the wars, because we're all just saying, I'm not doing that. I'm not joining in with that kind of polarization against other human beings. My consciousness has expanded to such a state, such a level, I never, ever want to hurt another living being. Feel that sense of spaciousness when you drop into stillness. Can we feel more love? The more we feel peace and love and joy, as I've said before, these are acts of defiance in a miserable world, the more we will shift the collective to accelerate and magnify this quantum evolutionary shift that we are right in. We are right in it. We're in the thick of it right now. So the best thing we can do is stay in your love, stay in your light, and we will really be rocking it as we move towards New Earth. And that doesn't mean that not going to be any disruptions. I think the solar disruptions are going to be very significant. I think the seismic disruptions are going to be very significant. But the more we can embody light and stay in love, I think the more bubble wrapped we will tend to be from that experience, and the better able we are to help the other people who are stuck in extreme circumstances. Because if we're in fear, we're not going to be very helpful to them. If we are strong in our sense of self, we are going to be of the best use energetically to help the collective. I hope that's helped you. I think the second half of April is going to be even stronger in its energy. So just keep coming together with like-minded people. And thank you for listening right to the end if you're still with me. God bless. Bye for now. I'll be back very soon with some very different videos, the next couple of videos. Bye for now.